Good morning. Hi, I am Miss Snyder, and I have the privilege of introducing Avery to you. Um, I have had the privilege of teaching her since she was OB junior higher in math, and it has just been a lot of fun to meet with her this year. So I
Seeing
have seen
Avery contemplate brokenness, pain, empathy, and friendship. And she has really thought deeply about these things. And excuse me, it has been a pleasure to walk alongside you. And she has a deep desire to really help others understand the brokenness of their loved ones and their friends and to help them in that journey. But also, Avery has really inspired me in the way that she has decided to just march into the brokenness and to try to understand it and to even embrace it, if I dare use that word. And her passion is going to definitely help others who have had similar experiences to be able to do the same. And so I look forward to hearing what she has to share with you today. So without further ado, Avery. Oh,
Thank you. One in 7 children in the U.S. experience psychological childhood trauma. What comes to mind when I say the word trauma? This word, which I will explain more in a minute, and especially the phrase, I'm traumatized, have been popularized to an extent where their true meaning and effects have been lost. The CDC came up with something called the ACEs score, or the Adverse Childhood Experiences score, which ranks trauma 1 through 10 on experience, not severity. As you can see, I have a chart up here from 2020. 64% reported at least one childhood experience that was negative in their lives. Unfortunately, this is fairly normal. 17% reported 4 or more out of 10. This 17% is who my capstone is focused on. The ignorance around this group of people not only exists, but is also extremely harmful. There are probably many students at Front Range that you are not aware of that struggle with trauma and carry the shame that accompanies it. I wanted to do this capstone so that these people not only feel safe and seen, but also to help communities understand people you have and will continue to meet throughout your life that are like me. The ignorance around this topic has and still does impact my life. Amazingly, the trauma field has advanced its knowledge so much in the past 10 to 20 years, gaining insight on its effects and treatments. Unfortunately, society is still stuck in the past in regards to talking to, thinking about, and being in relationship with trauma survivors. I hope by educating people's understanding that they will help those affected, their families, and their relationships be able to thrive. I want to address this lack of awareness so that phrases like, what is wrong with you? Or, it was a long time ago, get over it, are never said again. Not only do I want these phrases to cease to exist, but I want people to understand why they shouldn't say these things. My struggle from my childhood affects the way I act, the way I think, the function of my brain, the way I see myself, and so much more. I have spent years trying to undo the ignorance when I should have been healing from the trauma itself. People who experience trauma have to cope one way or another. Some do it through writing, some do it through diving into scripture, while unfortunately most use unhealthy mechanisms. I learned through this capstone that researching and finding answers is what helps me cope. Psychological childhood trauma impacts each individual in a different way, so it is key that we are educated and approach them full of gentleness, empathy, and genuine curiosity, while still reminding them of God's presence. I have been in therapy for over half my life, so I figured when it comes to trauma and mental health, I know very well of their effects. But through my capstone, I learned how to explain trauma on a level everyone can understand. So, what is trauma? Trauma is when the nervous system cannot handle the experience it is going through, and it actually stalls, regresses, fragments, or falls apart. And the nervous system is so overburdened with the experience that it is not working to its full capacity. For my capstone, I visited Joshua Station, which is a Christian nonprofit that gives housing to families in need. There, I met a youth counselor who taught me this physical explanation of trauma. Imagine my hand here is a brain. My wrist is the brainstem, which is how the brain communicates to the rest of your body. My thumb is your limbic system, or your emotional brain, which is where all your emotions come from. And then my cortex, or my fingers, is your logical system. When you feel unsafe or scared, your logical brain allows your emotional brain to take over, and this is what allows you to makes you make decisions quickly and keeps you safe when you're in actual danger. When your emotional brain takes over, you engage in one of the 4 responses, or the 4 Fs. These are flight, fight, freeze, and fawn. Flight is when you escape either physically or emotionally. This can look like literally running away, avoidance, or even scrolling on your phone for hours. Fight is confronting the threat either physically or verbally. This can look like kicking, screaming, or quote-unquote anger issues. Freeze is when you are so overwhelmed that your body physically cannot react. This looks like immobility or not being able to move at all, or panicking on the inside but looking perfectly calm on the outside. The last one, fawn, is actually a newly discovered trauma response, but it is very common in cases of childhood abuse. This is when you appease the threat. This can look like people-pleasing, difficulty saying no, or even compromising your own needs out of fear. All of these include something called dissociation, which is when you feel disconnected to yourself or the world. Dissociation is one of the biggest trauma symptoms, and it's very common. When someone is safe and out of the traumatizing experience and they're triggered or reminded of the traumatic situation and their emotional brain takes over and they engage in the 4 Fs, they are suffering from PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. This occurs when someone experiences trauma in the past and it remains stuck in the brain. There is a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that stores your memories, and this is often where we see trauma stored. Have you ever been yelled at by a teacher or coworker and it reminds you of a traumatic memory from your past? That is trauma. Everyone experiences it on some level. However, my capstone is on more severe childhood trauma. Up until the 70s, this term did not even exist. People who were traumatized were labeled as crazy or put into insane asylums. In the book I read for my capstone, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which is such a good book. If you are interested in any of the stuff I'm talking about, I highly recommend. It is so good. Anyways, Kolk explores research around trauma. His research started when soldiers were coming home physically, but not emotionally. Mentally, their minds were still stuck in the battlefield, which is later realized as caused by PTSD. People then began linking childhood abuse to trauma. What kids experienced growing up heavily impacted their mental health, their function as adults, and their relationship with others. When someone's safety is constantly being threatened, or the traumatic event was over a longer duration of time, this is called CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. While the two have similar effects, there is one key difference. PTSD is an isolated event, such as a car accident or an assault, while CPTSD is over a longer duration of time, such as childhood abuse. Problems arise when we try to put people into boxes, so I will be talking about how trauma can look different in every single person. Through my capstone, I learned that trauma can manifest itself in so many different ways, both physically, emotionally, and emotionally. So no two people experience things in the same way. If I were to ask you, a kid who was traumatized, who is now an adult, you may picture a troubled person, or one that does drugs, or one in jail, etc. While this is a true reality in some cases, you must understand, trauma can look different in every single person. It affects people differently internally with their brains, but it also affects people differently externally or physically. For my capstone, I did an interview with Dr. Alina, who is a therapist and trauma specialist. She told me how childhood trauma can look different into adulthood. One person may show symptoms by gaining 200 pounds, another by working themselves to death, another by playing video games every day and not working at all, or even another person could show symptoms by being bedridden with an autoimmune disease. Every human is so different. Although dysfunction appears in many different ways, I learned through The Body Keeps the Score that it appears in either one of 2 ways in children. Either aggressive and acting out, or hypercompliance and perfectionism. These 2 are how we externally see children's bodies responding to their trauma, and how it is usually displayed in school settings. The ones who act out are the ones who are focused on, but with little root to their problems, solely punishment. And the ones who are high functioning are often overlooked or not taken seriously if symptoms do appear. Trauma not only affects the body through visceral body responses, the 4 Fs as I talked about, but it also affects the brain in ways that show up on scans. It alters the chemicals and causes different physical or emotional reactions that children who have experienced trauma cannot control. Here is a brain scan. Up here I have a brain scan of an adult woman who was traumatized as a child. The yellow is the amygdala, or the memory part of the brain as I talked about. The yellow is that activity. So as you can see, you can literally see trauma in the brain. When someone is traumatized in their adolescent years and their emotional brain takes over all of the time, they are suffering from CPTSD. When this happens, they are getting triggered or reminded of the traumatic event. There are 4 major triggers, like categories. The first one is sensory, or smells and noises, maybe certain textures. The other one is emotional, feeling abandoned or getting yelled at. Another one is environmental, or certain locations or certain social situations. And another one is relational, someone's certain tones or mannerisms. While this is only the broad view of triggers, you must understand that for people who have been traumatized, almost anything can be triggering or remind them of that traumatic memory. For my capstone, I researched different treatments or ways to combat these symptoms and triggers. The main one I focused on was EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. EMDR is a psychotherapy technique designed to help people process and heal from traumatic or distressing memories. It involves recalling the traumatic memories while engaging in bilateral stimulation to activate both the logical and emotional sides of the brain at the same time. This process allows the brain to reprocess the traumatic memory and reduce its emotional impact and negative intensity. A couple ways EMDR is done is through eye movements, which is following a light bar back and forth, tactile or holding paddles that vibrate back and forth, auditory, which is where you wear headphones that vibrate back and forth or beep back and forth, and then self-administered. Do self-administered with me. Take your hands like this and cross them. Then interlink your thumbs. Now put them on your chest and tap, alternating between left and right. Self-administered, or the butterfly hold, as it is called, is great because you can do it anywhere, anytime. So next time you feel anxious or dysregulated, try it out and see if it helps. If you have any further questions on EMDR, feel free to ask me because I could talk forever on the amazing impact it's had on the trauma world. For my capstone, I met with a group of Denver seminary interns getting their degrees in clinical psychology. When I asked them to explain why people who have experienced psychological childhood trauma feel so isolated, they said it's because these people often act in ways that are considered strange or off-putting. People are isolated from their peers because the people around them do not understand their odd behaviors that were once used as survival mechanisms. This is why I chose this as my capstone topic, to educate and to help those who feel alone feel seen. So I have only skimmed the surface of trauma and its effects, but what do we do with all of this information? We must show people who have gone through psychological childhood trauma patience, gentleness, and God's goodness. Our response as Christians matters. It is our duty to stay away from ignorance. Through this capstone, I learned how and why researching and gaining knowledge is so important around this topic. Do not be quick to label someone as weird or aggressive because you almost never know what is going on behind the scenes. Be people who are slow to judgment and quick to compassion. My answer to the question, then what can we do, is what changed the most through my capstone. My first answer was nothing, you will never understand, which I now know comes from a place of being guarded myself. My new answer comes from a quote from my interview with Dr. Alina. She said, "Do not treat someone as fragile or like, I don't want to touch you because I don't want to break you, but instead treat everybody like they're full of resilience and capacity and gentleness. It is an honor to get to know people." Although we cannot fully understand each other, I learned through my capstone that helping others and being present and being a shoulder to lean on is so important. If you don't know what to say, you don't even have to speak. Simply be a shoulder to lean on and listen to them. Through my capstone, everyone I talked to agreed that community is the best way to combat the symptoms of psychological childhood trauma. Community brings God's love. The biggest trauma response is isolation, and it is the one that causes the most problems. Not only do people feel isolated from God, but they also feel isolated from everyone around them. Trauma causes tension in one's relationship with Christ. It causes doubt and tension. Often they feel that God hasn't protected them, or they question why God allows things to happen. While there is no easy answer, by being present and showing God's goodness, you can help these people feel even a little closer. For my capstone, I interviewed Omar, an ex-convict. He highlighted how no human is exempt from pain and how we have to have empathy for one another. Suffering is inevitable, but I hope through my own empathy, knowledge, and understanding that people may feel God's peace through my capstone. He is here and still cares. God allows people to heal, but you need to allow him in to help you. My favorite verse in the whole world is Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. I love this verse because it reminds people who have been through psychological childhood trauma that God has not given up on them. He is here and still cares in their healing. While it is so good to talk about Christ within this topic, we must be mindful that people who experience trauma struggle with their relationship with God in a different way. We must not use faith or scripture to invalidate or undermine people's experiences. If all else fails, the most important thing to do is going back to Dr. Alina's quote. Do not treat someone as fragile or like, I don't want to touch you because I don't want to break you. Instead, treat everybody like they're full of resilience and capacity, but also with gentleness. It is an honor to get to know people. My goal for this capstone project was to educate as many people as possible on psychological childhood trauma. However, if even one person leaves my capstone feeling safe or seen themselves or has a new understanding of how trauma works, I have accomplished my goal. Be aware of this topic as it is so prevalent in our modern world. As I started my speech by saying, 1 in 7 children. That could be around 5 students per grade here at Front Range. We are surrounded by psychological childhood trauma. So it is our responsibility to be educated and knowledgeable. If you relate to any of the things I have mentioned in this speech, know you are not alone. And I'm free to talk afterwards if you need somebody to talk to. I always have my doors open. If you are listening to this and this is all new to you, know that it is an honor to get to know people. Some of the most traumatized people or with the most difficult childhoods are some of the most amazing people you will meet. Your actions and words have an impact on those around you, so be mindful of what you do and say. For as I chose for my senior quote, you never know the invisible battles people are fighting, so choose kindness.
A couple of minutes for any questions for Avery.
Yes.
Do you plan to pursue a career in this field? Try to help people as a foundation going forward?
Yes. My goal is either to become a trauma therapist or a trauma researcher on like the different aspects of it. But yes, I definitely am pursuing it in college. Yes.
I just want to say thank you. As someone with my own childhood trauma, I really appreciate this capstone.
Yeah.
Stop making me cry.
No, bro, you're making me cry.
All right. Avery, it was a pleasure to hear you, just to see your growth through that. And it's astonishing. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Let's give it up for Avery one more.